They said it would be good for him. That was the exact phrase they used, spoken casually over greasy takeout boxes and half-warm coffee, as if they were suggesting a new workout routine or a different brand of diapers, instead of a date. And Daniel Harris laughed it off the way single dads learn to do, with a tired smile, a shake of the head, and a reflexive no that came from somewhere deeper than words. Because when you're a 35-year-old widower with a 6-year-old daughter and a life held together by school schedules, grocery lists, and memories you don't talk about, the idea of dating feels like someone trying to rewrite a chapter you've already accepted as finished. And Daniel had accepted it, or at least he thought he had, even as his friends, Mark, Jason, and Lena, kept exchanging looks across the table, the kind of looks that told him this wasn't just idle talk. Because Mark cleared his throat and said, "We already set it up," and Daniel laughed harder this time, actually choking on his coffee, wiping his mouth as he said, "Very funny," except none of them laughed back. And that's when something uneasy stirred in his chest. Because Lena leaned forward, eyes soft but determined, and said, "It's not a joke, Dan." And Jason added, "You don't even have to call it a date, just dinner." And Daniel's smile faded as he realized they were serious, really serious, and he felt that familiar pressure behind his ribs, the one that came whenever the past brushed too close to the present, and he started listing excuses automatically. "Emma has a school thing. I'm tired." "I don't even remember how to do that anymore." But Lena cut him off gently and said, "Emma's staying with my sister. She adores her. And you've been tired for 6 years." And Daniel looked down at his hands, rough from work, scarred from small accidents and big responsibilities. And he thought of Emma's laugh, the way she curled into his side at night, the promise he'd made to her mother in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and goodbye. A promise to be enough, always enough. And that promise echoed in his head as Mark said, "Just one night." And Daniel finally said the words that felt safest. "Who is she?" And Jason smiled strangely and said, "You'll see," which should have been his cue to walk away. But instead he sighed, long and deep, and muttered, "Fine, but if this is a prank, I'm leaving." And they all swore it wasn't, crossing hearts and everything, though something in the way Lena avoided his eyes stuck with him all the way home. Through bedtime stories and spilled milk. Through Emma asking, "Daddy, are you sad?" And him replying, "No, Peanut. Just tired," which was true and not true at the same time. And when Saturday came faster than he expected, Daniel found himself standing in front of his closet, staring at shirts that all looked the same, safe, neutral, forgettable. And he chose one without thinking. The blue button-down Emma liked, because it made his eyes look happy, and that alone almost made him cancel. But he didn't, because he was tired of being afraid of small things, tired of feeling like life was happening somewhere else. And so he drove to the restaurant Mark had texted him, a quiet place downtown with warm lights and big windows, the kind of place people went to celebrate anniversaries. And he parked across the street, gripping the steering wheel longer than necessary, telling himself this was just dinner, just an hour. But the moment he stepped inside, something felt off, not bad exactly, just charged, like the air before a storm. And the hostess smiled and asked his name. And when he said Daniel, her smile changed, just a fraction, like she knew something he didn't, and she said, "Right this way," leading him toward a corner table already set for two, candle-lit, menus neatly placed. And Daniel swallowed hard, because his friends were nowhere in sight. And that made sense, except it didn't, because this was supposed to be a setup. Awkward, obvious, something he could joke about later. And as he sat down, he checked his phone, half expecting a group message saying, "Gotcha." But instead there was only a text from Lena, "You okay?" And he typed back, "I'm here," adding a forced smile emoji that felt ridiculous. And then he waited, watching couples around him lean close, laugh softly, touch hands without thinking. And he felt like an observer in someone else's world, until footsteps approached his table and a voice said, "Daniel," and he looked up. And that was the moment his body betrayed him completely, because his breath caught. His hands went cold and his mind went blank. And he froze, literally froze, staring at the woman standing in front of him. Tall, composed, eyes wide with the same shock he felt, because he knew her. Not casually, not vaguely, but deeply, painfully, unmistakably. And for a split second he was back in another time, another life. Standing in a hospital hallway with this same woman beside him, both of them younger, both of them terrified, both of them holding on to hope with white-knuckled desperation. And her name slammed into him like a wave. Rachel, and she said it too, barely above a whisper, "Daniel," as if saying it might break something. And the world narrowed to the space between them, years collapsing into a single heartbeat. And Daniel's friends' voices echoed in his head, "You'll see." And suddenly he understood why Lena couldn't meet his eyes, why this felt like a storm waiting to happen. Because Rachel wasn't just anyone. She was the woman who had been there, the night everything fell apart. The woman who had held Emma while Daniel signed forms with shaking hands. The woman who had disappeared from his life afterward without explanation, leaving behind unanswered questions, and a silence that had hurt almost as much as loss itself. And now she was here, dressed elegantly, hair pulled back, eyes searching his face as if looking for permission to breathe. And Daniel realized with a jolt that he hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't even blinked. And somewhere deep inside him, anger flared at his friends, at fate, at himself for not walking away sooner. But beneath it all was something else, something he hadn't allowed himself to name in years. And Rachel finally took a tentative step closer and said, "I didn't know it was you." And he wanted to say 1,000 things. Why are you here? Why did you leave? How dare you? But all that came out was a rough, broken, "I didn't either." And the hostess hovered awkwardly nearby, sensing tension she didn't understand. And Rachel glanced at her and then back at Daniel and asked softly, "Do you want to sit?" And Daniel looked at the empty chair across from him, at the candle flickering like it didn't care about the past. And he thought of Emma, of promises, of wounds that never fully healed. And he nodded slowly, because whatever this was, joke or not, accident or design, it was already happening. And as Rachel sat down, their knees almost touching, Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty: this night was going to change everything, whether he was ready or not. And as the waiter approached with practiced cheer, Daniel forced himself to breathe, unaware that this was only the beginning of a story far bigger, deeper, and more dangerous than a simple date. And if you want to know what happens next, why Rachel froze just as hard as Daniel did, what secret she's been carrying all these years, and how one dinner will shatter everything they thought they knew, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because Chapter 2 is where the truth comes out, and you won't want to miss it.